Hi there, thank you for joining this seminar. Today I'm here to talk with you about how we are trying to solve the Two Sigma problem here at Learning Pool. My name's John Brydges and I'm the Director of Product for Platforms at Learning Pool. I live in a little village called Dorchester-on-Thames, just south of Oxford. For any fans of Midsummer Murders, it's one of the villages where it's filmed. So the Two Sigma problem, how do we replicate the efficacy of one-to-one tuition at scale across large teams in different locations, maybe even on different continents? How do we upskill our people through deep, purposeful learning experiences that create real change at a strategic level? How do we do this within the world that we all now operate in as learning professionals, where we're being asked to do more with the resources that we have, and sometimes with less resources than we used to have? And of course, it would not be a webinar in 2026 without discussing AI. Because if 2023 was the year of excitement around generative AI, and then 2024 was the year of building real world valuable solutions using generative AI, I really feel that we've turned a corner and that 2025 was a year of seeing real world results from generative AI. And this will continue as we move into 2026. What we're expecting to see at World of Learning is, and I hope to see so many of you there, is a move away from AI hype and simply putting AI at the start of product names and features, for example. In 2026, it almost doesn't matter that AI is involved. It's table stakes. It's expected by you as learning professionals, by your learners, and your stakeholders. What really matters, of course, is the outcome. So at Learning Pool, when we are creating new product experiences, the outcome is where we start. We don't want to simply create convenience AI, be it glorified search engines disguised as a chatbot, a translation tool, or being able to quickly create a short piece of content that's actually not that great. We don't want to go from walking to riding a bicycle. All of that is just doing something that's been done before, but faster. We really want to change the way that people learn and the way that learning is delivered. We want to change the destination for our learners. Don Taylor asks two questions in his Global Sentiment Survey. What will be hot in workplace L&D in X year? And what is the biggest L&D challenge in that year? This data on the screen that you see here is specifically related to the challenges that are faced by L&D professionals. I'd love to hear from you whether this spread of challenges reflects your reality. Is there anything that's missing? Are your challenges biased towards any one or two of these things? Strategy, skills, and talent have remained consistently high, showing how our industry colleagues are all trying to tackle big problems with a changing skills landscape that's affecting that war on talent, the robustness of their workforce, and also how learning is making a strategic difference to their organisations. Whilst trending downwards in recent years, but still the second highest challenge on average over the last 4 years, delivery remains a critical concern, which I feel is reflected in the marked and steady increase of the challenges around resources, budget, and workload in that group over there on the left-hand side. Whilst this global survey data speaks for itself, from Learning Pool's perspective, we see pretty much exactly the same kind of distribution, but with another factor that isn't directly called out in Don's research, and that is higher learner demands. Learners now demand more from the quality of experience that they receive from the systems and the content that they interact with in their working lives. So we have a perfect storm. We are being asked to do more, create more strategic impact. Our learners expect more, and we have the same or often less resources than before in order to do this. Our organisations need their workforces to upskill or change their skills. We used to talk of T-shaped people, but more regularly, we're finding from our clients that people are being asked for pie-shaped people. And maybe even sometimes comb-shaped people. Broad knowledge and soft skills with at least one and often multiple specialist skills. So I have a question for you. Have a think, who here feels like their organization is looking for comb-shaped people? Does that resonate with you? And if so, have a think about how you're adapting to cope with this. I'd love to hear from you. I know I'm preaching to the choir because of the audience, you're L&D professionals, but true skill development requires much more than click next learning. It requires much more than merely compliance and assuming that a timestamp for an e-learning completion in a database someplace demonstrates competence and, importantly, of course, confidence. So let's consider a different destination. Well, we actually know the destination. We've known it for about 40 years. It's what I opened with. It's Benjamin Bloom's 2 Sigma problem, and it's the holy grail for a reason. We know that Bloom's study was maybe a little idealistic. New research based on learning in real life settings suggests that we're probably talking more of a 0.8 Sigma problem. But even if the real world results are less dramatic, all of the commentators on Bloom agree that personalized one-to-one tutoring gets the highest results. It proves that personalization is the key. But why? Why does it work? It's not magic. It's not just the presence of a tutor. It's what the tutor actually does. And that's where Bloom's research shows how the tutor excels at 2 things. So first, we have the constant feedback corrective process. So that's the feedback corrective process. Unlike a conventional classroom where you wait weeks for a test and then a tutor sees a learner struggle with a concept, in this scenario, first they provide a constant feedback corrective process. Unlike a conventional class where you wait weeks for a test, a tutor sees a learner struggle with a concept and intervenes immediately. They provide a hint, an explanation, or a probing question. That's the live adaptive loop. Secondly, the tutor maximizes what Bloom called alterable variables, the things that we can actually control to improve learning. If you look at the most powerful variables that he studied, they are things like reinforcement, cues and explanations, student participation. A one-to-one tutor does all of those perfectly. A 1-to-30 classroom or a standard e-learning course simply cannot do that. So this constant feedback loop is especially critical for developing what Bloom called higher mental processes. That's the complex problem solving and analytical skills that our organizations desperately need. This is a real skill development, not simply performance support. So this is the mechanism of personalization. It's this very mechanism that has driven our recent product developments at Learning Pool. AI powered, naturally, but grounded in solid learning principles. And this got us to thinking about the need to connect Bloom to another giant of learning science, and that's Lev Vygotsky and his concept of the zone of proximal development, or ZPD. So the ZPD is that magical just right gap. It's the space between what you can already do on your own and what you simply cannot do yet. Think about it. If I gave you a task that's too easy, you're bored. You're not learning, you're just performing. If I give you a task that's way too hard, you get frustrated, you disengage, and you give up. A good human tutor is an expert at finding that ZPD. They don't just give you the answer, that's too easy, and they don't just let you drown, that's too hard. They give you scaffolding. It's a hint, it's a probing question, a bit of feedback, a worked example. Just enough support to deliver at just the right moment to help you cross that gap yourself. That is the engine of mastery. And it's the very first thing that we lose, of course, when we try to scale learning. So a 50-slide click next compliance module has no idea what your ZPD is. It can't scaffold. It can only broadcast. It is a tool of information transmission, not human transformation. So if the goal is Bloom's 2 Sigma and then the mechanism is Vygotsky's ZPD, well, what's the environment? How do we build a place for this kind of thing to happen online at scale? This brings us to our third, and you'll be pleased to know, final theory, and it's the community of inquiry model. This framework, developed for high quality online learning, says that you need 3 presences. They need to overlap for deep, meaningful learning to occur. So, number 1, we have social presence, the human to human part, feeling safe, connected with your peers, building trust and collaborating. This is the community. Cognitive presence, the what. So this is the content, the problems, the critical thinking, the aha moments. This is the inquiry. And then most critically for us, teaching presence. This is the facilitator, the guide, the person or thing that guides the journey, asking the probing questions, provides the feedback and manages the scaffolding. And this is where it all clicks together. For 4 decades, that teaching present has been a non-negotiable human bottleneck. It had to be a person with limited time, running around, trying to manage cohorts, sending 50 reminder emails, and trying to give feedback, but never having enough time to do it well for everyone. And it's why scaling deep learning has been a paradox. To scale, you had to remove the human teaching presence. But the moment that you do that, you lose the ability to find the ZPD and provide scaffolding. And your 2 sigma results or your 0.8 sigma results collapse right back to the classroom standard. Until now. So what if your teaching presence wasn't just a human? What if AI could provide that one-to-one scaffolding at scale? What if it could give every single learner immediate, personalized feedback on their work right in their ZPD at 2 a.m. on a Sunday? What if automated workflows could handle the guidance and the journey not as spam, but as a responsive guide that knows where you are and what you need to do next? This is where we move from theory to practice. This isn't the convenience AI that I talked about earlier, that bicycle that just gets you to the same place a bit faster. We're talking about personalization, which of course is one of the main uses of AI, but not just to provide people with more content recommendations or even to provide an adaptive experience. We're talking about the learner receiving direct, instant feedback at every step that is entirely personal to them and their interactions with the experiences within a course. So we're now going to talk about how we're using generative AI in various forms to turn multi-level courses into intelligent, deep, and impactful learning experiences that can be deployed at scale with limited intervention and facilitation by humans. How can we use technologies like AI coaching, AI-driven assessment, and intelligent automation built right into our learning platforms to create a teaching presence that scales? One that finds each learner's ZPD and one that finally helps us to solve that 2 sigma problem for all of our people. But what do I mean by a deep learning experience? Well, this is the kind of thing that you might take on as part of onboarding or a leadership program or something where you're trying to upskill people. We're moving beyond performance support here. We're not just searching for an answer, getting a quick response, getting on with your day job. This is a deliberate and dedicated learning experience, the kind of multi-level course that, let's say, a first-time leader may undertake to develop their leadership and management skills. In a world that sometimes feels dominated by microlearning and saying that learners have limited attention spans, at Learning Pool, we're actually seeing a resurgence of deep learning experiences alongside that microlearning and performance support, because actually clients are being asked to make a real difference in their organization that you cannot simply do with a microlearning short format. Yes, L&D have to get information in front of people and provide performance support. Ensure that answers are provided to questions very quickly in the flow of work. But if the modern workforce is going to survive and organizations are going to survive, then all the change that is happening right now, then we need to develop and oftentimes significantly change the skill profile of our workforces. And the way to do this is through deep learning experiences that are then followed up by that micro-learning performance support. But these kind of deep learning experiences require facilitation. They cost money, they cost effort and time. to ensure that they work successfully, and particularly if they're going to work for the whole population over the cohort and at scale. Every single learner at every skill level, regardless of where they are based and how much time a human can spend assisting them. This means that employing or contracting an experienced and effective subject matter expert or a facilitator who's able to be deeply involved with that learning experience, helping those learners of all abilities and pre-existing knowledge levels well enough to develop mastery in the way that a one-to-one tutor would deliver. So what we have seen is that the vast majority of learners within modern organizations see learning and development as a chore. We all experience this, something that's done to them rather than something that they want to do themselves. And we have to face it, right? This is our fault as learning and development professionals, because the output of the L&D team that they experience is just that. It's the annual compliance window. It's a reactive cybersecurity module because someone opened a dodgy attachment. It's another e-learning module. Maybe I'm being harsh, but our output and our outcomes are representative of the technological, operational, and cultural conditions that we work in. So deep learning experiences that require facilitation from L&D colleagues or from those subject matter experts are usually reserved for things like leadership programs. So here is our fundamental change in our destination. It's about using AI and automation to finally replicate the mechanisms of one-to-one tutoring, lets us reduce the costs of facilitation, and provide deep learning experiences for more of our people more regularly, because that is what they really need in order to develop their skills. So let's take a look at what that actually looks like in practice. So the intelligent learning experience doesn't require an investment in a whole bunch of new technology or a reinvention of your existing content. This is designed to really sit alongside the kind of content that you're providing at the moment within courses to your learners. So we split this into 3 sections. The introduction is, of course, the introduction. Fine, welcome to the course, etc. But really the 2 core ones are enable and assess. So within the enablement phase, this is all about your standard learning, be that e-learning or it might be some learning on the job. What we add in here, though, is AI providing coaching. AI looking at the reflections of those learners, commenting on those reflections, summarizing them over a period of time, looking at how that thought changes for that individual learner, reacting to that, providing them guidance. The learner practices and receives instant feedback, that feedback corrective process. And then that goes round in a circle until they move on to the assess stage. So this is where we're doing things like knowledge checks and maybe formal assessments, but where we repeat these. And so we do an assessment maybe, and then a coaching on how that went. But in the assessment, again, provide instantaneous feedback at scale. And maybe there's some more practicing that's part of this before we go around the loop until that final assessment that's in there. So the components, the first one would be coach. So this is our coaching tool. So the learner is able to have a conversation with the coach, understands the context of the learning and what they're trying to achieve. They can discuss this with them. It's built on the GROW model to enable them to be able to get a set of SMART objectives at the end as a set of feedback and as an action plan. So these are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. There's also next steps and guidance on what to do before the next conversation. They can also practice. So in this scenario, they are able to interact with a persona, an AI persona that pretends to be maybe a colleague or a client or a customer of theirs. And they're provided with a scenario that they're in where they're about to have a difficult conversation. There's some goals for that scenario. And then there's instructions, the mechanism of how to interact with the tool, but also really reinforcing those goals and how to bring that out in the conversation. And then they get started. So you'll notice here that we haven't included an avatar yet, but this is not something with a talking head. And the reason for that is that we haven't found any that are actually as good as we want, in that they don't distract from the overall learning experience, which is the point. The key thing with regards to Bloom and the ZPD and that teaching presence is the feedback, that corrective feedback that we provide to them at the moment they have finished this conversation. So you'll see here that there's an overall performance, giving an idea of how they've done. And then each individual part of the conversation, or maybe it's around tone, maybe it's around understanding the reasons for that refusal to engage with change. All of these are absolutely specific to the individual scenario that that person has just interacted with. And they get a score, but they don't just get a score, they also get, here's the things that you did well, here are the things that you could do better, here are the things that you should do to actually get better at that. And then just like with the coach, they get a PDF that can be downloaded to go and discuss that with maybe their manager, with an actual human tutor, with a coach, with a facilitator, etc. We've had some great success with this with one of our biggest clients, Yum Brands. You may not know of Yum, but you'll certainly know of KFC, Taco Bell, Habit, and of course Pizza Hut. They take a whole variety of our products from us, including AI conversations, which they have been rolling out across subsets of their 1.2 million learners across the globe. So we're talking about huge scale here that we manage for these guys, and how the AI tutor and the AI conversations enable them to be able to roll out these excellent deep learning experiences at scale across that user base. So they have found that 96% of their restaurant general managers, their shift leaders, and their team member trainers used their 70-20-10 recipe for success, which was a set of AI conversations. And 96% of them felt that it really helped them to prepare for the future conversations that they were going to have with their team members. So we got some fantastic feedback, and how they felt like it was a real person providing that feedback, and a real person that they were interacting with as well. So I talked within the intelligent learning experience diagram about the reflection stage within the embed phase. So when we're reflecting, what we do is that we provide open text input at various points throughout a course. We invite the learner to reflect on that. And then what we do using an automation tool, it's effectively like an if this, then that workflow. We send that off to a large language model, to an AI model, and then it provides feedback on those reflections and how those reflections and the thought progression of that individual has changed over time. I'm not going to read all of this in front here. We've got an opportunity to send the slides to you later. But really, you can see thereabouts like how you've identified 3 key leadership traits: fairness, organization, and caring about team members without favoritism. This is absolutely personalized to that individual's reflections. They receive it via email after a period of time, so that they they're brought back into the course to really think about those reflections. Again, just like a tutor would do. We combine this with social learning, where we're talking about conversations in context. In order to be able to assess this, we do semantic analysis of these comments, where we're looking at engagement and presence of thought, and we're looking for sentiment. Is the comment positive or is it negative? So here's an example of a comment. So I think you're correct. That demonstrates opinion. Fundamentally based, what the advertising industry is based on. That's a relation to the real world. Perhaps the narrative of John's video was not the best choice. Could have used different examples. Critical thought. And then finally, impact upon the real world and this person's life. So we can say that this comment is engaged. And this is a real world comment from one of our learners with some of the PII removed. This, on the other hand, is not engaged. It's an opinion, that's fine. It is positive, but we wouldn't say that this is particularly engaged. So we use this kind of thing in order to be able to identify subject matter experts or future leaders, identify laggards and intervene where needed, and also optimize the content and the social structure. So we're almost using those comments and the analysis of those comments as a way to analyze the performance of the course itself. It's like feedback without directly asking for it. We then move on to the assess phase. So within this, we have got a specific tool that enables assessment of open text questions at scale. Now, there's a lot of text on this slide. I completely recognize that. But what we're looking at here is that there's a question, and then the learner is able to provide, either by typing or by speaking, an answer that is a long form open text answer. Using generative AI, what we're able to do is then analyze that answer against specific grading framework for that particular question, set by the learning administrator, of course, with AI assisting there, or set by the subject matter expert, and then providing that feedback instantly. So going all the way back to what we were talking about before about the tutor. So interjecting these tutor moments all the way through that course. So they get told how they've demonstrated a good understanding, but what they can do to do better and what they should focus on the next time around. So we were doing this with an organization called GB Rail Freight in a high stakes environment. So safety critical assessments, multiple open input questions on rail standards and safety. They're a 370 million turnover organization. They saved 50 productive working days per cohort of 10 people. This is because they took their marking time down from 5 days to 2 hours. So instead of having to have those 10 people in a cohort sit and watch health and safety videos in a training room someplace whilst their assessments were being marked, they did it over lunch. They discussed the answers, and then they were able to get these people out into their safety critical roles with a huge reduction in time. And it's been an absolute game changer for those guys. What they also found was that it created more consistency around the assessment marking across the various different training centers and across the various different assessors and facilitators, because the AI was doing the bulk of the marking and then the assessors were checking that. And sometimes they were finding that the assessors were using old knowledge or old assessment criteria, and it was only when using the assessment tool that they were able to find this out. So that's the intelligent learning experience. So where we have that introduction phase, of course, but then we go through enablement and assess, be it knowledge checks, be it actual formal assessments. But we've got this cyclical process where we're using all of these tools and those principles around the feedback corrective process as much as we possibly can to ensure that we're replicating that one-to-one tutor environment. So that's us at Learning Pool. We help unlock limitless potential of every organization's greatest asset, which we believe is their people. What I will say is the key takeaways: think beyond AI that can do what we do now but faster, and demand outcomes that unlock potential or capabilities that were otherwise out of reach due to cost or resources. And then tomorrow, really think about your offering. Consider where deep learning can make a real difference to your organization's goals and issues. Can you do more of this deep learning rather than simply performance support? Because you would have the AI providing that facilitation. And of course, contact us. There's a QR code on the screen there. And then you can also scan the one here. And you can, of course, visit learningpool.com. Thank you very much.